You're listening to the B&H Photography Podcast. For over 40 years, B&H has been the professional source for photography, video, audio, and more. For your favorite gear, news, and reviews, visit us at bnh.com or download the B&H app to your iPhone or Android device. Now here's your host, Alan White.
Greetings and welcome to the B&H Photography Podcast. Before we start up, we're curious to hear your thoughts about our recent Camera of the Year episode, the Camera of the Year for 2016. Send us an email with what you think was or is the best camera of 2016 and tell us why you think it's the best. And send it to podcast@bhphoto.com or tweet us at bhphotovideo with the hashtag bhphotopodcast. Also, subscribe to our podcast on iTunes and tag us on Instagram with the hashtag BHPhotoPodcast. Today's subject will certainly be educational to many of our listeners, and I'm sure I'm going to be learning a thing or two. We're going to be talking about post-processing solutions and digital assets management. John and I are fortunate to be joined by two recognized experts in the field, and we couldn't be more excited. Peter Krogh is a photographer, writer, filmmaker, publisher, and consultant. For 30 years, he has created compelling visual images for editorial and commercial clients and is considered one of the world's foremost authorities on digital asset management and workflow. His latest book, Organizing Your Photos with Lightroom, is now available at bhphoto.com and at his website, www.thedamnbook.com. Welcome. Also, we are equally delighted to welcome a return guest to our podcast, Katrin Eismann. Katrin is the author or co-author of Photoshop Masking and Compositing, The Creative Digital Darkroom, Photoshop Restoration and Retouching, and Real-World Digital Photography, amongst other publications. She is the founder and chair of the Masters in Digital Photography program at the School of Visual Arts, which is now in its 10th year. In 2005, she was inducted into the Photoshop Hall of Fame. In 2015, Sony asked her to be a Sony Artisan, and most recently, in 2016, Katrin was honored as an Adobe Max Master. You got potential in this field, kid. That's all I can say. Anyway, welcome to everybody here. Let's start with Katrin. Could you walk us through your typical approach to workflow?
Well, the easiest workflow is to have someone else do the work for you.
I love it.
So that's my favorite way of
That's how you got into the Hall of Fame?
That's right. That's why I have students.
I go to the Rite Aid kiosk.
That's right. So my workflow depends on two primary objectives. Is this image going to be for screen or is it going to be for print?
Important, sure. Okay.
Okay. And when I say screen, I meant, monitor, Instagram, sharing.
That's mostly the case these days.
It's a different mindset.
Uh-huh.
Because if I know I'm going to print, I know I have to be a lot more careful. I have to get, starting camera, I need a better file, better exposure, better lens. Because you can get away with a lot on a little Instagram picture.
Oh, yeah.
In fact, sometimes I've put pictures on Instagram that weren't really sharp. And people love them. And I would never make a print out of that file because once that ink hits the paper, the truth is revealed.
Oops.
Yes. So on that note, if I know if it's going to be social media, like this is a nice picture, something that I saw, I'll either photograph it with my iPhone or with any Sony camera that I'm walking around with. And the reason for the either iPhone or the Sony camera is with the Sony, I love that I can transfer the files wirelessly to the phone for processing and sharing. Mm-hmm. And I get it all the time like, oh, your Instagrams look so much better. That's right, because I'm using a professional camera.
Using a real camera.
Yeah. And so let's say I'm just going for screen. Make the photograph, be it with an iPhone or a Sony. Now, other cameras have a support wireless transfer also, the Fujis, et cetera. And then
let me ask you a fast question before you want, keeping that in mind. If you're taking pictures that you know are only going to be going out in social media, they're going to be looked on just monitors, and you have a camera here that has 42 megapixels, are you going to still be shooting full-size files, or are you going to knock it down knowing that it's just never going to be that big?
Go shoot raw or go home.
Gotcha. Okay.
Stay home.
Thank you. Yes. Okay.
Yeah, because, cards are so big, so fast. Hard drives are big, fast, and cheap. And so I don't know why I wouldn't shoot raw. Now I'm not shooting the widget that's on sale or the bananas or the kids' football game that no one's going to look at those photos again. Apology to all football mothers. But, for me as a fine artist, quality comes first. I am very particular. So I don't,
I
for
agree.
example,
I like having as much meat on the bone as possible.
Yeah.
Really,
exactly. So photograph either with the phone or the Sony. Now I usually carry 2 to 3 cameras with me, and I know where the phone fails. It usually fails in fine detail, high contrast, fast motion. It's not going to happen. So I'll choose the right camera for that moment.
Mm-hmm.
And then my go-to app is Snapseed. So it's a Nick piece of software. Now it's owned by Google. It's free. And I just love that app, what you can do with it. There's things that you can do in Snapseed that you cannot do with Photoshop.
Such as
when you transform, there's full transform in Snapseed. I can do vertical, horizontal, and rotate at the same time. Let's say I did this yesterday. I photographed the One World Trade Center. And of course, I'm on the street. It's leaning back.
Mm-hmm.
And I did the vertical. I improved it. And it filled in the corners.
You corrected the keystone.
Yeah,
and
it filled in the corners. It's like content-aware crop on a phone.
I like that.
I showed that to Adobe so many times. Like, come on, look, it's here. It's free. I mean, seriously. And the ambient slider in Snapseed, I don't know. It's a secret sauce. So, and it gets better.
And there's more.
I love this application. It's non-destructive.
Important.
Yes.
It's non-destructive, meaning I can process a file, go back a year later, open it again, Snapseed. All the edits are live. And I can copy edits to other files, meaning I like a look, because I always try to post 3 images a day, like a little series.
Yeah.
So I want them to look the same. I can't remember what my thumb did, but once I have it nice, I can copy those settings, open the next file, boop, insert. They look the same. So it's pretty sweet. So
you're only going to Instagram with what you do for Snapseed, though. That's only for Instagram.
Yeah, Instagram. Yeah, Facebook, Twitter.
Yeah.
The problem arises though when people see those pictures and they go, "I want to buy a print." Like, because then now I have to try to replicate it on the desktop. And that's a challenge. I try, but it's not as easily done because of the secret sauce they have. And I have tried.
What will you try with? I mean, what program when you go?
I don't work for Adobe, but I do bleed red. So it's going to be Lightroom and Photoshop.
Lightroom to Photoshop.
Yeah.
And you can't seem to figure out a workaround or anything.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting that, what the engineers do to that file, what their settings are. It's not across the board. That's why people, for example, like using plugins. If Photoshop could do it all, you wouldn't have a plugin like environment. And so no, I can't. I've tried. I should not say that in public. Edit that out. But it's interesting. So what's good about, always having 1, 2, 3 cameras with you, I'm always looking. If I don't have a camera with me, I don't see as clearly. And I'm very focused. So every day I walk from the Port Authority to West 21st. And I've done it hundreds of times now. I literally walk down the street saying, "Katrin, see a photo, see a photo, see a photo." Right? And it helps me be a better image maker. And I don't, there's like 2 boring conversations. Okay. One is what a person dreamt last night. And 2, the description of the picture you didn't get because you didn't have a camera. It's like, stupid. So.
Can you give us a brief explanation of and the differences between processing apps, raw processing apps, management apps, image browsers, like Photo Mechanic? Could you get into that a bit?
How much time do you have?
3 minutes.
3 minutes. And I'm very glad.
And start.
And I'm very glad that Peter's here. So it's interesting. There's like production apps or applications, and there's creativity apps.
Okay. Yeah,
and some of them overlap. All right. Let's start with the shooting with a phone. What's beautiful about the smartphones is how you can expand their use with a variety of apps. I mean, there's different camera apps for different purposes.
Right.
And I think that's fabulous that you can expand your hardware with how you control it. So you want to shoot the file as well as possible. So that would be a photo or a camera app. All right. Then I actually want to know where it is. And that's the asset management. And it's interesting. I have no problem managing my files off of the big cameras. Download, rename. My phone files, that's a bit different question. It's a challenge. I have my methods, but I'm going to defer to Peter. Oh yeah, I am deferring. And so then the creative apps are the processing. I mean, a raw file is by nature flat, dull, and soft. Right? I mean, that's what a raw file is.
Right.
So it's up to us as the photographer to think about, why did I take that photograph? What do I want to enhance? What do I want the viewer to see? And so I go into that mode more like, to enhance that file to match my vision.
And how much of your vision did you recognize as you were taking the picture, and how much do you develop as you're working on it?
I took the picture because of my vision.
Mm-hmm.
I see the software interface in my viewfinder, which is frightening when I look at people. They think I'm retouching them.
Mm.
So,
are you doing that to me right now? Okay.
So I shoot for the software. I shoot knowing I'm going to get the best information possible, because there's no going back. There's no you got to shoot right away.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I think is great about using your phone and having that image processing software on the phone is that you essentially remove all of the time between when you shoot a picture and when you process it. And that, to me, really changed my conception of the workflow and how integral that post-processing vision is to my shooting. And for me, the big change was when Lightroom came on the phone and started really working, because I'm pretty much in Lightroom for my management of all of my images. And to be able to immediately go to those very familiar sliders was a huge change in just how I approach the entire process.
Yeah, and that the Lightroom desktop recognizes all that and respects us. You don't have to redo the work. So the whole idea with like this digital shooting on the phone, it's shoot, process, share, repeat. That you're learning as you're doing. Are you shooting right into Lightroom?
I am,
Mm-hmm.
and we could, if we want to, when we're talking about asset management, one of the things I love about that Lightroom experience is that the images, as I shoot them, and when I connect to wireless, are bouncing back into my main collection on my computer. So I actually have one central dashboard, one central place to see everything, and whether that's images shot on assignment or images shot on my phone, I can see all of that back in my main Lightroom catalog.
It's clear that you guys are both working Lightroom and Photoshop, but questions we had prepared were for some alternate programs that are out there, and you both earlier kind of said, well, what alternate programs, I guess, but you did make a good point about when you're working for yourself and when you need to collaborate, and hopefully you can kind of expand on that a little bit.
Exactly. I mean, there's a great number of apps and software and that are developed for Mac, many more for PC, and I mean, they're fabulous. There is, and I think that's great that people could find a free application that works for them. All right. The difference is if you're working for yourself and it's a hobby, which I respect completely, go test everything, download it, try it out. I think that's great. But as soon as you get into a collaborative environment, that you're responsible part of a production team, you got to be very conscious that what you use and the files that you are working on, that you can share seamlessly. And you're not going to always know where those files end up. So you should really, in a way, standardize the file format, the color space, the bit depth, the layers, how to name the layers, because that file is going to go to another retoucher, or in the movie industry for the posters, it's going to go to a finisher. And those files have to be standardized. I mean, in a lot of industries, you're not even allowed to use plugins or extra filters, because the next person's not going to have that. And
as soon as
then
you
you're
do
stuck.
that, you've broken the standard.
That's right. Exactly. So you see it in high-end retouching, back to the movie posters. If they use, let's say unsharp mask or something, they name the file USM and then the 3 numbers mean the settings they used. There's no time to double click and figure this stuff out. People have to know exactly what you did. So I'm getting a little adamant here. So, I mean, there's the experiment. There's a new application called Luminar, which looks really nice, really beautiful. And, once you buy it, it's yours. So no subscriptions. And it's interesting how they have their workspaces set up. So, and it's a very elegant interface. I'm glad that there's an environment of developers, of people trying out new things.
I'd add a little bit to what Katrin was saying.
Please.
And that is that if your output is a finished TIFF for print or delivery, it doesn't matter quite so much exactly how you get there. You can use third-party plugins and other kinds of weird circuitous workflow to get there as long as you're producing a quality file in the end. And experiment and use whatever you want. If you're talking about a non-destructive image editor that you're using for your entire collection, then it's much more important, in my view, that you use something that's going to be around, because those changes aren't really baked into the files. And you can find yourself in a world of hurt if sometime down the line that program disappears. And
Not that that's ever happened, of course. This is all hypothetical.
Yeah, and I do some consulting. When I get back to DC, I'm helping some high-profile photographers get their stuff out of Aperture.
Oh, really?
And it's they have years of work locked away. And on one level, you'd say, well, you can trust Apple to be around, and they are around, but it didn't become as important to them. And one of the things I like about Adobe is the work in photography is absolutely central to the company's future. And so there's no way they're going to say at some point, sorry guys, photography is not part of our gig anymore.
And that
Go ahead.
that was kind of your thinking on why Aperture went away. It was a business model. It was part of a bigger thing, and it wasn't.
I think they're just making so much more money on the phone apps.
Follow the money.
Yeah.
Can we jump back a little bit? Can you explain a bit about non-destructive editing compared to other, and
Sure.
talk about some programs that are one or the other?
Sure. So non-destructive editing came about because raw files were essentially read-only. You can't save the changes back to the raw file because it's encoded by the camera and it kind of has to stay that way. So originally that was a real problem because you had these files you couldn't change. And then along came a bunch of different applications that would allow you to make changes through settings, and they would save the settings and show you what the picture looks like with the settings applied, but not actually change the original image. And one of the huge advantages to that is if you have 100 pictures that need the same change in the brightness or the color balance, you can apply those changes to the whole group. And it makes it extremely efficient. It also makes it very efficient because you're not saving multiple versions of the picture. The raw file is actually much smaller than a comparable TIFF. And so there's this ton of advantages. You can also reprocess later. We're seeing incredible changes in the functionality of these raw file processors that let you go back to old images and make really beautiful new interpretations. And so there's these huge number of advantages, but because the changes aren't baked in, it requires that software be around for you to interpret the images. And so examples of that are really anything that works with a raw file. Capture One is probably the biggest in the professional space aside from Adobe, and people love it for the skin tones. They love what the engineers at Phase One have done to render color. So Aperture was one, but really anything that works with raw files is going to be non-destructive.
Here's a question for you. I don't even know if this is a valid question or not, but if you have files, and we're all getting to a point right now where we have image files that are getting onto 5, 10, 15, even 20 years old, is there a point where you really should transmigrate or upgrade these files? I mean, how long is it safe to let a file sit before it gets to a point where you might have trouble opening it, or it might take on some funkiness?
Yeah. And what could go wrong? What could possibly go wrong?
It's all ones and zeros. It's perfect.
So, the good news is that the modern raw file structure, so, sort of post Nikon D1, is basically open and available for conversion. And there's plenty of open source tools that are available for developers to use to reinterpret those old files. Now, that's a different story than the stuff back in the 90s. Like some of the Kodak stuff was proprietary and is really hard to open. But we don't really have that problem now. So from a standpoint of being able to open it, we're not really in danger. But from a standpoint of being able to have your interpretation of the picture saved and available,
and be faithful.
Yeah, that's a harder problem.
Okay.
Fortunately, there are some good solutions. DNG file format, the digital negative, is a great solution. It offers a ton of under the hood functionality that most people, for most people, a file format's like a black box of mystery. But DNG, it carries the decoding tools that it needs, color profiles that can be used to open a file. You can put a full-size, baked, final version of the image inside the DNG. It has verification tools that are in there, and it describes in very specific ways how to decode the file, so that if somebody comes back and looks at a DNG 100 years from now, the information is in there that says, this is how the sensor was made. This is the sensitivity. This is the pattern of the different color sensors in the camera, and so all that information is attached to it and can ride along with it.
Can I ask you? I mean, who is DNG, and how do they work with the various companies? And do you know how that process?
So DNG is an openly documented file format created by Adobe to solve a bunch of these problems. It has been submitted to international standards bodies for adoption as an open standard. And while it's created by Adobe, it's not owned by Adobe in any way. And it's a thing you can convert your raw file to and keep the rawness.
I like to say the DNG is like, because it's openly documented, it's like any 10-year-old that can write file open will be able to access those files. So it's not proprietary. That's very important. But I'm going to continue on Alan's question. So I'm moving, so I'm packing, and I literally found the box of CDs. And it's a big, heavy box. And I'm like, I need to get these off these CDs. How much can I pay a student to do it? I have one old computer that has a CD drive now.
Right.
Peter, what do I do?
I think you just said it. You find a student and you
because that's the problem. Is the CD, the file's fine, but the CDs.
The media that we have them stored on, that's really what the big issue is. By the way, we're talking a lot of stuff about raw files and DNG, and sometimes some of us actually just shoot JPEGs, and some people have cameras that only shoot JPEGs. They don't have the option of doing raw. And what I often recommend people do is the JPEG that you're getting, treat that like a raw file. Open it up, do whatever you want to it, and save it as something new. Never save the changes, and keep that separate as a master file, so that while it doesn't have all the abilities of a raw file, it still has the original integrity to it, so that, yes, you can go back a few years later, open it up, and play more with it for whatever reason. So it's kind of, I like to think of JPEGs having that aspect to them also.
Absolutely. That's how you should work with your JPEGs. You can, in fact, turn them into DNGs if you want.
True, right.
But if you're using them with a non-destructive image editor, then you can always go back to the starting place, and you can always reinterpret, and you haven't thrown information away. So absolutely. To answer your question, Katrin, about what do you do about the CDs, I help a lot of companies figure out what they do with their archives. And you pile the CDs up on the left of your computer, and you just put them in one at a time. And ideally, you use a piece of software like ChronoSync, which can copy from one place to the other, and it will alert you if it has a problem copying. And you take anything that's a problem CD and you put it in a special pile. But everything
to burn pile?
The how much do I really want these pictures pile? And hopefully you have some idea what they are. And but it is absolutely time to get anything off of old media, and that includes old small hard drives that are sitting around. If you have a bunch of stuff stored from 10 years ago sitting on a 20 gig hard drive somewhere, it is time to plug that sucker in and pull those onto a new big.
And what's your recommendation then for that new big drive that you'll put everything on?
For most people, it's simpler is better. Most people have no idea how to judge the severity of like an unrecoverable parity error in their RAID device. They don't even know what that is. So
it means trouble.
Yeah, it does mean trouble. It actually means money.
It means hire a student.
So if you can fit your entire photo library on one hard drive, do that. So then it's simple.
And would you recommend solid state over?
So solid state is awesome. It's very stable. It doesn't break when you drop it. Long-term stability of them sitting on a shelf is a little bit less known. But if everything you have can fit comfortably on solid state drives you can afford, great. If you're in the multi-terabyte realm, then it may not be quite so affordable.
Yeah, right.
And an 8 terabyte spinning disk is going to be $300, something like that.
And you can buy a couple of them and leave them in different locations.
Absolutely,
that's another thing too. To back up all your files and keep them next to your computer. If there's something that happens, God forbid, to your house, it's all gone. Keep the stuff away.
Yeah, and that's
cloud.
One of the big advantages of a single big hard drive as your archive is you just make an exact duplicate onto a backup drive. Ideally, take it somewhere else.
By the way, is there any advantage or reason to store CDs behind the visor in your car? I notice a lot of people do that. I'm just curious about that.
Not the ones you want to keep.
The sun bakes it in.
They're along with it, right along with those 8-track tapes.
Yeah, and you can use them as coasters also.
Yes, I do.
Can we jump ahead to Peter, talk about what you're working on now with Photo Shelter?
Yes,
and you brought up cloud-based, so I think maybe that's the next step here.
Yeah, cloud really is really exciting, I think, in terms of how people can work with their photos. And we are rapidly approaching a world where it's going to just simply be commonplace for you to have access to all of your stuff wherever you are on whichever machine you have. People who are used to using Dropbox can see their stuff on their phone, on their computer at work, on their computer at home. It's all, it's a universal file system that's kind of running in the background on a cloud. And if you ever use Slack as it's an application for communication with teams.
Okay.
It's very common in the business world. The same Slack experience is available to you wherever you go. And so that's where the world is headed. We're not quite there right now. I think Apple Photos is doing a pretty good job with this. Lightroom is working hard to do it. They need a few other pieces for it to all be there. And then there's these other services, like I've been working with Photo Shelter, which is a professional photographer's web service that does portfolio and job delivery and stock sales. And it's a high-end service. And so it has its place to, say, post a shoot, let your client have access to it. They can proof or they can take final delivery through that. And that's absolutely integral to the way I do business as a photographer. And most of the photographers I know, that's how they deliver their images, is through some kind of cloud service. There are other, SmugMug is one that's a very nice consumer-based. There's some pros use it, but it's primarily consumer-focused. And it's a great, easy to get started service. Both PhotoShelter and SmugMug will integrate with Lightroom, so you can do all of your post-processing and you can push the images up to the cloud and make them available to people.
And when you say,
I'm sorry, but I do that too, just with Lightroom, with collections. I mean, it happened the other day. You know, I live in New Jersey. I've got a great view of New York. I get this question: do you have any pictures of the New York skyline? It's sort of what I'm known for. Right?
Only every other day.
Every other day. And so I'm literally on the couch. You know, I got to catch up on my binge watching.
Yeah.
Boom, boom, boom. 50 images into the collection. You know, shared it through Lightroom client. Like, oh, that was fast, which was bad because then they get spoiled. You know, but I mean, you can that's fabulous in Lightroom. And speaking of Dropbox, that's how I manage my phone pictures. I have everything go into Dropbox automatically. And then no matter where I am, they follow me.
But when you said through Lightroom, so and forgive me, but Lightroom has their own, it's going right to a Lightroom cloud service.
Yeah, so lightroom.adobe.com.
Yeah.
And so anybody with an Adobe ID can log in. The client sometimes gets a little irritated that they have to log in, create an account for the first time, but it's pretty robust.
Yeah,
I
and
like
that also allows you to whatever collections you sync out to the Adobe cloud also can be synced to your phone or an iPad. So one of the things I do with that is I take my portfolio images or recent events or my favorite family pictures, and I make a collection and I push that out. And so I have it on my phone. I have the ability not just to push those images from my phone into a central collection, but to then also take images that I love and put them back on my phone and have this kind of live link. And it really lets you see your pictures and live with your pictures in a pretty remarkable way. And you can even, do some cropping and processing if the images aren't, perfect at that point.
Right. So you could do that with collections, but you can't do it with smart collections.
No, it's of course they're worried. Well, they're worried about churn. So you could make a smart collection and have a 100,000 image Lightroom collection. You make a smart collection and drop 100,000 images in there kind of accidentally, and then those are all going to want to be syncing up to the cloud. And then you decide, oh no, I didn't want that. And if those all come back down, then they're worried about bandwidth and how expensive that could be and how much that could slow down the entire experience for you, but also for everybody else who's sharing the cloud resource.
And the bandwidth and the major issue going forward with cloud space and I mean, what are the problems going forward with
and
putting
what are
everything
the
in the
limits
cloud?
right now, and are we hitting them?
No, we're actually not hitting the limits. We are moving into a magical world where cloud storage is approaching free. And I'll talk about that in just a second. But the advantages of cloud storage, you can have this stuff everywhere. And one of the things that we're seeing is that cloud is becoming a major area of competition between services, and holding your photos is a way that companies think they can make a sticky user experience that is sticky, meaning it's really hard for you to leave.
Right, you're there forever. Right.
And so they're competing. Amazon has got free unlimited photos for your if you're a Prime member, and Adobe has this cloud service. I'm confident that we will see a larger allocation of space. The biggest risk on all of that, though, is that something could happen, things could go away, and no matter who you are and what service you use, I am 100% convinced that if you want to keep something, you must have a copy in your possession.
I was going to be asking that as a follow-up question, because that has been a fear of mine. Because I've seen
it's a legitimate
services
issue.
come and go. And let's face it, we're dealing with, the grid goes down, even if it burps at some point, a lot of stuff could be just irretrievable or corrupted or something of that sort. So you really do have to maintain your own, at least your good stuff.
Yeah, I mean, and given especially for still photographers, video, you can get into some very expensive storage.
Oh yeah.
But it's really hard these days to shoot enough still photos to have it, hurt you financially to store it all. At 8 terabytes at $300, that's it takes a long time to shoot 8 terabytes worth of photos.
Yeah.
And so, yes, absolutely have your own copy. And I don't consider that you have your own copy unless you have at least 2 copies, because any device could fail at any time with no notice.
I actually just added a third layer to my
and there should be a third, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, Peter taught me the idea of the 1, 2, 3, right? So it was like one database, 2 different medias, 3 copies.
Yes.
Uh-oh.
Close.
Is that right?
Yeah. 3, 2, 1.
Edit that out.
3, 2, 1.
I'll add my spin on that. You know what Murphy's Law is?
Anything that can go wrong will go wrong.
Yeah. Do you know what Alan White's law is?
No.
Murphy was an optimist. So anyway.
And 3, 2, 1 is 3 copies, 2 different media, 1 stored offsite.
Yep.
Right.
And the 2 different media, so 3 copies, you have your primary copy. There should be a local backup that you can update frequently and easily. And then there should be a disaster recovery copy stored somewhere else. That disaster recovery copy, one of those should also be a different media so that you're not only dependent on hard drive. So if you get a virus and it sleeps and infects all your other hard drives, and then one day you turn it on and it crashes, and then you pull up your backup drive and it crashes too because it's been infected. So having a second media.
What would that media be? The cloud or a CD?
Could be
or
cloud.
not
Could
CD?
be a Blu-ray disc.
Okay.
Could be write once hard drive. But cloud is increasingly becoming a really viable alternative.
And I guess, given the news of late, what's the concern with someone getting to your images in the cloud and security?
Are they running for president?
You never know who may be running for president.
So it's a real concern, and I think that's an issue that we have to look at. So one of the ways that I try to feel more comfortable about that in the work I was doing with that I do with Photo Shelter, we have a dedicated 24-hour security team. That is their only job. And so if you need to make stuff available over the internet using a service where you have a pretty good idea that somebody's job is to defend against it. If some of your photos are things that should absolutely never, ever be seen by other people, or there will be very serious repercussions, then you probably want to think really hard about where that's going to go.
Naked celebrity photos.
Yeah. I did some consulting with a let's see, how can I say this? Somebody who was part of a royal family, and there are images there that must not ever be seen by anybody. And the only solution is private copy, local media, probably not even connected to the internet.
Did you see them?
No, I don't even know what they are. I was made to understand that this was no fooling around.
Wow.
Can those photos be destroyed? Is it possible to destroy
If it's
something?
on the cloud?
Well, I mean, if they're I guess they want the photos for some reason.
Yeah.
But you can delete a photo to non-existent, right? That is true.
Throwing it in the trash or recycle bin and emptying it doesn't necessarily do that. It leaves it's essentially like you wipe the entry in a table of contents, but the pages are still in the book. And if you knew how to go find those pages, there they all are. So yes, you have to wipe a drive, and the security that comes with modern operating systems actually does a pretty good job. If you format a drive and write zeros, you have to be somebody like the Russian or Chinese government or the United States government and be willing to spend as much money as a nice house to go recover that. So they're not doing that to try and find your
Puppy pictures.
Your puppy pictures, right?
We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to talk more. Actually, I just got a folder with 8x10s of those royal family pictures. We're going to get into the details. Be back in a moment.
We hope you're enjoying this edition of the B&H Photography Podcast. Send us a tweet at BHPhotoVideo, #BHPhotoPodcast.
We are back. Question. We're going to be talking about Photoshop usage and little tricks and tips and things of that sort. Should sharpening or anything else be applied to an image either before or after converting to a JPEG? And something I've never really gotten a straight answer on, although I have my own answers. Should sharpening be held to the very, very end? Because you never know what size the ultimate image will be. Say you do some tweaking at full size and it's going to come down, or whatever the case may be. Where should you be doing all this stuff? When and where?
Well, I use JPEGs just for on-screen, for just that experience. And so the JPEG, in a way, is like a final file. So I don't want to do something on top of it unless I'm trying to create artifacts, which I prefer to avoid. So for me, JPEG's a final cooked output.
Okay.
So I don't want to, I try not to re-edit it again and again, because you're just going to add artifacts. So not for me.
But say you started with a JPEG. And again, a lot of our listeners, that's
sure, 100%.
In that case, I would say it should be the very, very end of the process.
Well,
correct or wrong?
You can start with the JPEG,
yeah.
Shoot camera with JPEG, and then you could still use Adobe Camera Raw or Lightroom to process it because it's completely non-destructive.
Okay, correct.
The database keeps track of your changes, which is really nice. You can go back and re-edit it. And then the last step would be, what is my final output going to be to the screen, to Facebook, know what those standard sizes are.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's that. So I'm sort of going to be stubborn, stick with once you have the JPEG and it's going to the monitor, you're done with it.
Yeah, I would. I'll give a slightly different answer.
Yeah.
There's a school of thought that there's essentially three kinds of sharpening. There's sharpening in the conversion, capture sharpening, creative sharpening, and output sharpening. So when you go from RAW to a rendered version, so when you open it up in Lightroom, or even when your camera is changing its RAW file into a JPEG to show it to you, there's some level of sharpening that has to happen.
Even if you have it off.
Yes, there is some that's happening in the background anyway. Then if you're a Lightroom user, this is, you can see this in Lightroom really plainly. So that first sharpening happens, that's invisible. And then what they have is creative sharpening. And that creative sharpening is there for you to decide how smooth or crunchy you want the image to be. And so those tools are in there, those sliders, to allow you to say, if you've got a picture of a really leafy forest with a lot of texture, and you just really, it's a texture picture, and you want that, then you can put a lot of sharpening on it. Or if it's a portrait of somebody and you want to give her really nice smooth skin, then you can back that off. And so that's really about your vision for the picture. Then the other part, the output sharpening, is about the use that it's going to. And you can see in Lightroom there, on the export module or in the print module, there is additional sharpening that can happen as you're going to output.
Right, and I'll add, in the creative sharpening, you also have the selective sharpening. So you're going to sharpen the areas you want the person to look at, so, the eyes, the product, etc.
Right.
And in all honesty, it's better, I would say, to be a little conservative with your sharpening, because there's almost nothing worse than an over-sharpened picture.
That's
those halos.
Yes, that's real true.
Yeah, and you have to get used to what it looks like. I think people don't see it, and then when you learn to see it, it's
That's even more so if you're going out to print. It's always a lot crunchier looking on the print.
Well, it depends on which.
It also depends what surface.
Media.
Yeah,
there's a lot of.
It's a big question.
I shouldn't be blanking on that.
And what
and
what the print engine is doing.
True.
Right.
Because some of that's going to be invisible under the hood,
Mm-hmm.
and then sometimes you have control over it.
And what you have to do is, if you're going out to print, you really can't judge the sharpening on screen, on the monitor. You have to make the print. And so
we're getting closer to a world where you don't really have to pay the kind of attention that you used to. people would do books on sharpening.
And
And
whole
all
books.
these,
But we were also shooting with 4 megapixel cameras back then too.
well, the software didn't do the kinds of things that software should do. So you had all this crazy luminance sharpening and masking, and do you do it
Edges.
in lab color, and do you? But yeah, so it's you don't have to think about it so much anymore, and the sharpening in Lightroom is, even though it's just a couple of sliders, or it's just a choice, screen,
Scenic,
low, medium, high,
landscape,
whatever.
yeah.
That under the hood, there's some very complex calculations that are being done. It's actually doing luminance sharpening under the hood. This whole thing that you used to have to round trip through lab color and super geek out. Now you just drag the slider to the right.
I love those technicians.
Yeah.
Can you go over what a mask is in Photoshop and what are some of the uses? You guys toss that around a little bit?
Well, a mask allows you to, control where an effect takes place.
Okay.
So if you don't want an effect to take place, and it could be, a color effect, a sharpening, a filter. If you have a mask, now we're working in layers and we're being non-destructive, that area of the mask needs to be black or dark. If you want the effect to take place, it needs to be light. I mean, you can literally think of it like a Halloween mask. You put the mask on and the eyes are cut out, that would be the white area of the mask you can see.
Mm-hmm.
And the part that's covering your face, that you can't see your face, that's the black part of the mask. And so what's beautiful about the masks is it really allows you to control where changes take place, how images come together, what is sharp, what isn't sharp. And I always feel like there's a few skills to be a very good Photoshop user, and selections and masks are one of them. The other one for me is, everything you know about color. But that really sets apart the dedicated amateur, the professional. Now, in all honesty, I see people's Photoshop skills going downhill because you can do so much on your smartphone. You can do so much in raw processing now. I mean, you can get your image 90% there with Lightroom or Capture One.
Isn't this
That
kind
was
of
gonna be
like
my question,
what
you
you
know.
just said about sharpening used to be like a whole major
Voodoo.
process, and
Yep.
now it's all the voodoo part of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you're actually saying the same thing in a whole different topic.
But
in a
I'm
sense.
keeping my 10%.
Yeah.
So you can get 90% there.
I've given away the 10.
He's sold out. The thing is you can get 90% there. Now, of course, if you want to do high-end retouching, you're in Photoshop. If you
Yeah.
want to do compositing, you're in Photoshop. If you're going to go to video,
Sort
cetera.
of.
what, compositing?
Yeah. You can do panorama and HDR
Yes.
non-destructively in
talking about-
Lightroom, but yeah.
I'm talking about putting a camel on the moon,
Yeah. Right.
like those real things.
That's a
that people
photo.
believe.
That's a
So,
Photoshop
so when
thing.
do you,
Yeah.
in your day-to-day, when do you jump to Photoshop?
So I use Lightroom primarily for the global changes. Make that file look really, really good. I use Lightroom to make many files look very, very good, and Photoshop to perfect a few.
Okay.
Because we all shoot more,
Okay.
right? We're not beholden to 36 exposures anymore. And it's like, I'm not going to open 200 images of a shoot in Photoshop.
Right.
So, Lightroom will get you 90% there. And then if you're going to make a large print and you're going to see everything, you've got to go into Photoshop to do that final refinement.
That was actually a question I wanted to jump back to because you had said it depends if you're going, to your phone or to print, and we never got to your workflow for print.
Oh.
And is that kind of what it is? Then you put it to Photoshop and make.
So
the
when I
final
know I'm
touches.
going to go to print, I need to look at every pixel and check it out. It's amazing. You make a print and suddenly you're like, what? I
Yeah.
never knew that dust spot was there.
Oh yeah.
You don't see it.
Oh yeah.
And so, and also looking on screen, it's very seductive. I think it has to do with like when we lived in caves and stared at fires, And
It's true.
now when you make a print, there's this object that you can study, live with, reflect on, circle with a Sharpie, and it becomes its own entity. Because on screen, everything is so flexible, so fluid, it's very seductive. So once that print, then you're like, oh, now I'm going to make another print. What can I do to make it better? Because it's, media, ink, etc. So the print is really that ultimate step. And that, for me, I need Photoshop for that. Now, I hear people like, oh, why doesn't Lightroom have layers? Why doesn't Lightroom have masks? there's an application that does. Or I will use a Jeff Shuey's line, Photoshop is a great Lightroom plugin.
Yeah, I tend to use it for professional assignments, for that one master file that's going to end up, or the small number of master files that are going to end up being used in print and reproduction. Occasionally for stuff I print, but I print a lot straight out of Lightroom without round tripping through Photoshop.
Here's a question for it. Considering the 2 gigabyte limit on PSD files, the 4 gigabyte limit on TIFFs, and the long saving times associated with compressed files, what are the best practices when working with larger size multi-layer projects or panoramas?
So Adobe's addressed that limitation with the PSB file format, Photoshop Big.
Oh, okay.
Which is now, up to 65,000 pixels in width or height.
Yeah, it's gigantic.
The gigabyteage is because that 2 gigabyte limit that used to be it still is a Photoshop document. Man, compositing and retouchers hit that easily, especially now with these, you have a DSLR, a mirrorless camera with 42 megapixels. So PSB works for that. Of course, there's one application that will open that file. It's Photoshop. Adobe's also done a great job in saving in the background, or saving now. You can close it'll just close it when you're done. And they really stepped up, especially with panoramics, because people were easily hitting that limit. So PSBs, and don't use them for regular Photoshop files because they are bigger, they don't have as much compression, and they take longer to save. But for production and these big files that we work on, you should investigate PSB.
Yeah, and there's one of the reasons that 2 gig limit exists is there's a lot of subsystems out there that your images or that your files actually pass through.
They can't handle all that capacity?
Historically, they just haven't been able to deal with files that big.
This is an interesting thing, and I've never been quite clear on this myself. The differences between curves and level adjustments in Photoshop. What exactly is the difference? I use both of them, and they seem to do the same thing, but what is the difference?
The difference is how you actually interact with the file. So levels gives you 3 places that you can manipulate the data: the shadows, the midtones, and the highlights.
Okay.
And you can see the histogram, and that's what it does. Curves gives you up to 16 points on a curve. If you want precise control, you're heading into curves.
Is also less destructive to the image quality.
Yeah, as long as you're using adjustment layers, and I will start shouting. Because that's something that if you want to work non-destructively and take care of your file, you've got to use adjustment layers.
Okay.
And a lot of people still don't, and it really gets me upset. I should start a movement or a change.org campaign.
Sounds like that's the answer to the question that we had.
Sorry.
What's the one thing about?
Oh, I've got 2 that. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
good.
I mean, it's I am so glad I started working with Photoshop. I mean, literally before it was released, so version 0.89. So
it was coal operated back then.
Pretty
right?
much.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
Bellow.
Because if I look at Photoshop now and go, oh my gosh, I need to learn this, it would freak me out. I mean, it's a 10-ton gorilla because it's such a big application because so many different kinds of people use it.
Jason and I were talking about that just yesterday, but you mentioning how complex it is. And my reaction was, I don't think anybody knows the complete Photoshop. I don't know if you
There's
can.
probably 3 people in San Jose. They do not have a social life. The good thing about that is what you have to do when you're using Photoshop is you really have to filter in. This is what I need to do and not let yourself get distracted. So for people that are, the 2 things that really upset me when people working on their images is they don't use adjustment layers because adjustment layers are very small in file size. They support opacity. They support blending modes. They support masking. You can drag and drop them across files. So I love adjustment layers. So I'm very adamant to use it. And then the next thing is the command key for the eraser is E. And that stands for evil. Because you're deleting pixels.
Right.
I mean, those 2 tools.
Mask them instead.
When I try to get them come on, take the eraser out. Of course, I'm not winning that war. But of course, it's really just a brush. But because once those pixels are gone and you save that file.
So something that may not be immediately obvious, but once you think about it, it makes a ton of sense. All Photoshop is really doing is pushing numbers around, right? It's digital photo is an image converted to numbers. And so each pixel has a value of, red, green, and blue if it's an RGB file. And all of those tools are math geek tools, curves and histograms, and levels as a thing that works on a histogram. The first however many versions until we got into Camera Raw and Lightroom were all really they came from the DNA of Thomas Knoll, who invented Photoshop, who's a math whiz. And that was the thing that he did. And that's why all the metaphors and all the visual interface is all math. In the more modern applications, it's not math. It's exposure. And it's measured in f-stops, stuff that photographers understand, or color temperature. And so as we, as the evolution into Camera Raw and into Lightroom and now, a million other apps, they are presenting this information to you as a photographer.
They just changed the language or the dialect in a sense.
Yeah, it's
how you present the information.
It's that, and it's the metaphor and how they work.
Metaphors.
It's not just it isn't just the label of the tool, but it is also how do you split up that math in a way that makes sense to a photographer.
And what that does is it lets the software interface recede so you can concentrate more on the image. And that's so important.
Yeah.
Instead of trying to figure out what, Gaussian blur actually does. It's like, oh, it's named after a German physicist. Does not help me use it.
Yeah, high radius sharpening, which was that wonderful trick that essentially is clarity, and it's look in a 50 pixel circle around here and boost the contrast just in that little local area, which super geeky and not a thing anybody would ever figure out on their own. Yep. Now it's a slider.
Yep. So I think we're in a great time with digital photography and digital imaging. There's lots of choices, be it your smartphone or a high-end camera, be it a free app or a professional application. And, I love when people say, oh, everybody's a photographer. I'm like, great.
Yes, it's
great.
Awesome.
Exactly. That means more people are becoming visually astute, are smart, are interacting with the world. You have to, most of the time, go out to take pictures. So you're not isolated. So I think all of these options are great. And if you want to learn, there's so many resources now. Obviously, there's forums, there's conferences, there's magazines.
BH Photography Podcast.
100%.
Yeah.
We're moving sliders here.
I listen to it every week.
Time.
One last question. What could you recommend as being essential extensions or plugins for Photoshop? Anyone who's working now on the tool.
Yep. I love the Nick plugins, which are now Google.
Right.
And there's a number of reasons to love them. I love them when I had to pay for them. but Silver Effects Pro. Yeah. If you like black and white photography, that is fabulous. So I still have it installed. I can access it either from Lightroom, from Photoshop. It's killer. And it's people are like, oh, I can do that in Photoshop. No, you really can't, because they put so much engineering into it. So the Nick features are great. Perfectly clear, perfect exposure. Topaz Labs has great plugins. So you want to take a look at them. What's great nowadays about software is they always have those free trials.
Yeah.
It's sort of like Crack Dealer. It's great. But so you can try it on your own pictures for
Actually, my crack dealer's name was Nick Silver, so it all works out pretty well.
So you can try it and see if it's going to fit your look. Do you want the overcooked HDR or not? So we can really enjoy that now. So I think there's some really good plugins out there.
I hardly ever use any plugins. Occasionally I'll pull up Photomatics for HDR, but I like what I get out of the raw conversion. The stuff I do in Photoshop typically is cleanup or compositing for a master file that's going out to a client delivery. For my own work, I'm much more about what I can do with the camera and my understanding of how the processing, the raw file conversion is connected to it. It's I feel like it's a natural extension of what I used to do in the darkroom with black and white photography. I used to always shoot full frame, and love to print with a black border. And it was, what can I do? I would pre-visualize that as I'm shooting, and then I know when I go into the darkroom, I'd make that, and it's it's a whole different tool set, but that's really what I'm looking at, and obviously working in color, but that's the way I approach photography, and so I don't do a lot of this plug-in jazz.
Well, it's not that you need a lot of plugins, but I've never met a pixel I didn't want to change.
There's one more that I did want to ask about noise reduction and and the proper approach, and that will be the last of the
that's a touchy
questions.
one.
Any
Noise.
What do you do?
Well, you want to understand where noise comes from. I mean, it's usually, you've increased your ISO or you've underexposed the file.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know they're related. So if you can avoid it, great. The newer cameras now, I mean, there's luminance noise, which is more structural. And then there's color noise, which is truly ugly. And then you see that a lot in your older camera files. These newer cameras, I mean, sometimes I think I don't have to take off the lens cap. I mean, they're shooting like 104,000.
Oh, it's sick.
Yeah.
It's absolutely sick.
But which is also great because it expands the time that you can take pictures.
Yeah, noise is, you need to think of it in conjunction with sharpening, because sharpening is what makes the noise show typically. That's what makes it worse.
Yeah.
And, noise is one of those problems where computers can fix it pretty easily, because it's a kind of problem that lends itself to an automated solution as part of a sharpening algorithm. And I found that the noise reduction in Lightroom is really, really good. And it ends up being a little bit of a iterative process where, I get it as sharp as I want, then I do some masking, which reduces noise and sharpness in smooth areas of the picture. And then particularly for small sensor cameras, I end up needing to do some noise reduction. Underexposed pictures off of my phone or off of, one of the small pocket cameras that I use, I almost always have to do some noise reduction. But then I'll go back and have to tweak sharpening or detail at the same time. But it's amazing what dragging that slider to the right can do.
Yep. Reducing noise often softens an image because noise is unwanted signal.
Mm-hmm.
So you're softening it by, let's say, denoising it. And then the sharpening is trying to bring those details back. So it's always a give and take. Another thing I do is I'll push the black slider down to make those shadows go a little richer, a little darker. And it's like, boop, bye-bye. Because people don't look in the shadows anyway. So, and back to the cameras nowadays, I actually like when I shoot at like 3200, like on the Sonys, or 1600. It doesn't have that color artifact. It's got this really fine little like black speckling, which I'm not going to equate it to film, but
I know what you mean.
It gives it a nice look, because lots of times back to compositing or retouching, one of the last steps you do is you'd add a soft light layer and add a film grain or a noise to that, because it covers up any of your tracks. And also, lots of times digital camera files have a tendency of looking rather computer generated, especially on flat surfaces, skies. So we'll add some luminance noise back in, and it gives your eye something to hang on to. So that might still be a throwback to how we saw prints with film.
Yeah, but that's great. That's a great
we used
tip.
to, we used to fall back to that pebble surface paper to cover up
That's
the
right.
errors.
So it's not
Right.
like all noise is not bad.
Right.
10, 15 years ago, I would never say that, because color noise, that was ugly.
Here's a question for you. I don't even know if it's really answerable, because there's so many different types of cameras in every manufacturer and brand. It's all a bit different. But how many stops can you push now from the native ISO of the average decent camera, meaning prosumer camera? How many stops can you push before you say, okay, now we're getting into a point where the noise is going to be a little bit annoying?
There's a really educational or illuminating test that I do when I teach classes.
Please.
And that is that I have people run a set of brackets, a stop apart, and then put the images in their post-processing software.
What are they photographing? Is it a blank screen or a gray card or what?
Two kinds of scenes, a low contrast scene and a high contrast scene.
Okay.
So, but the key is to put the card back in the camera and then look at your flashing highlights and see how often those flashing highlights are actually recoverable on a raw file. Because the thing that's flashing is not a place where there's no raw file detail. It's a place where the JPEG that your camera made to show you on the back of the camera, where there's no detail in the JPEG in one of the color channels. And so one of the things you'll find is that in most cameras, there's flashing highlights that actually have a ton of detail in there. And these are all decisions that the camera engineers are making to say, okay, where are we going to start telling the photographer he's overexposed or she's overexposed the picture? And we have to make a decision about the conversion to JPEG that happens in the camera, and then where we're going to give you warning. And I found that even, I'm typically a Nikon shooter. I found that even in the Nikon line, different cameras have more or less headroom, and because they're tweaking at each new camera model that comes out. And so you really, if you want to know when you're shooting, am I really overexposing it? Then you need to connect the two. What's my final product look like? What am I being told in camera? And I think also, testing for noise and high ISO. I'm shooting assignments at 6400 ISO with regularity, with D800 or D750, and getting beautiful files with just a little smidgen of noise reduction.
I give a similar assignment to my students.
Okay.
To do this bracket, and then we have them bring it into Photoshop and to match the over and under to the normal, so they actually see how much the processing can do.
Yes.
But also to understand that once you increase that ISO, it's not just noise. You're reducing contrast.
Yes.
And detail.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And so
your highlights and details
you need
start to go.
People really need to understand that. It's like you can't really trust what the manufacturer is saying. You need to test your own equipment in your own working.
And by the way, the takeaway really is run a test on your gear and just see what the tolerances are and how far you can push your camera.
You should also test all your lenses.
Oh, yes.
And that is one of the things that it can be shocking.
Okay, well, I tell you, I know I've learned more than a thing or two today. This has been terrific. Really appreciate it. Can you guys tell us a little bit about what you're up to right now, upcoming projects, Katrin?
Sure. Well, I'm concentrating on the Master's in Digital Photography program at the School of Visual Arts.
Mm-hmm.
Because I could probably update the courses each week, which I really don't want to do. But I put a lot of time into that program. We offer it both in classroom and online. And as a slight spin-off from that, SVA is now working on type of certificate programs. And we're working with a developer called Cadenze.com, and they've asked me to develop really practical courses for photographers. So we're working right now on photographers to videographer, photographer to 3D, because photographers have, and there's one photographer to asset manager I was going to talk to Peter about. He doesn't know that yet.
Yeah.
We have visual skills. And so what it's important is we're taking those photographers and giving them very well vetted and concentrated information with experts, all video based. So that first course will be released in July, photographer to videographer. I know we're not going to make filmmakers in 45 hours of content, but people get asked, can you do this? And as a photographer, you better say yes.
Safe to assume you're going back to Cuba sometime soon?
Well, we're offering a trip in Cuba March 2017.
Aha.
Only 10 students. We live in homes of private families and walk 6 to 8 miles a day.
Wow.
6 to 10. What am I saying? 6 to 10 miles a day, all through Havana. As I keep saying, you should go to Cuba before Starbucks gets there.
I love it. You're correct.
Yeah.
Peter.
So I'm coming off a 2-year stint as a product architect for Photo Shelter's corporate library product. And that was really incredible experience for me to be able to design a cloud service and get it implemented. I still do some work for the company, but not as the product head. And so I'm headed back to writing books, and I've got a couple in the works. The one that is consuming me now for days and nights is book on how to digitize photo collections and how to do it really fast, and then how to make it useful, how to annotate it.
I guess you mean prints, like or
well,
not
it's
necessarily?
prints and slides and negatives.
Okay.
And this came about because we moved my dad into an apartment, and there was an amazing photo archive in that house. And that's stuff that goes back to 1850s, I think. And everybody in the family wants to be able to see this. We also really want to capture the history and who these people are. And at this point, that's really my dad, who's absolutely sharp as a tack, can tell me a ton about who all these people are. So we're setting up copy stands for shooting the work with digital cameras and getting really nice, beautiful reproductions. And, we shoot the front and the back, and then we're putting it in Lightroom and cropping. And in some cases, I'm doing some restoration work to the images. And then we'll do the same with slides and also with color negatives.
And this is something
It's
that
exciting.
just about every family is going to be facing.
Yeah.
Photographer, for sure.
It used to be, there was this shoebox in the closet that had all these neat stuff that you could flip through. Now it's like, oh, look, we got Grandpa's hard drive.
Check the Explora site, the B&H Explora site, if you're listening to this through SoundCloud or iTunes, because we're going to put the links up to all the books and all his ideas.
Right. Tremendous, great episode. Thank you, Katrin. Thank you, Peter. You can find Katrin's many books and photo work at katrineisman.com or photoshopdiva.com. And I encourage you to check out her Instagram at Katrin_Eismann. That's EISMANN. Also, huge thanks to Peter. Look for Peter's book and work at Peter Krogh. That's KROGH.com. From John, Jason, and myself, thank you so much for joining us today.